So next I'm going to introduce two speakers who are going to be speaking together. Jan Dietrick has a master's in public health with a concentration in human ecology and food ways. She worked as an administrative dietitian for 12 years and now co-owns Rincon-Vitova Insectaries. She's also a director of the Dietrick Institute for Applied Insect Ecology. Ron Whitehurst is a pest control advisor and co-owner of Rincon-Vitova Insectaries Incorporated, along with his wife, Jan Dietrick, the other person standing here. Their team produces and markets biological pest control supplies. Ron leads Rincon-Vitova in both the field and the lab, evaluating products and practices that fit into a biocontrol program and that support organic production. Together, Ron and Jan promote pest prevention through agroecology systems approaches to eliminate the use of hazardous and polluting chemicals. They also are the recipients of the award Global Regenerative Business Prize. And with no further ado, please welcome to the stage both Jan and Ron.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, let's take a little poll here. How many people want more pesticides in their food? We got one here, we got one mark. Yeah. It seems like most people don't want more pesticides in their food. So why is DPR, the Department of Pesticide Regulation, still registering toxic pesticides that cause reproductive harm, birth defects, lower sperm count, irritate your lungs, and cause cancer? Inquiring minds want to know. I'm Ron Whitehurst, pest control advisor, and my wife, Jan Dietrick. We're co-owners of Rincon-Vitova Insectaries as a company since 1950. We have been helping farmers transition off of toxic pesticides by setting up programs to control pests biologically. Our motto is biological solutions for pest management. Our advocacy for safer and more eco-friendly pest control practices benefits thousands of farmers, gardeners, landscapers, communities, farm workers, eaters, old people, children, and so on and so on. We highlight the successful case studies of farms and communities that have transitioned away from toxic pesticides under our guidance.
My dad was an insect ecologist, a pioneering insect ecologist, a brilliant insect ecologist. So I grew up being aware of this problem. I grew up in the heyday of DDT. And in the early 1970s, something called IPM was born. That's Integrated Pest Management, to help make the situation a little safer. IPM is a sustainable approach compared to what was before, combining biological, cultural, physical, and chemical tools to minimize the risks. The principles and practices of IPM came to be and continue to mean identify the pest, the host, and the beneficial organisms before taking action. Establish monitoring guidelines for each pest species, and establish an action threshold for each pest before spraying. Then spray. The practice of IPM assumes you're going to rely on chemical control. It's blind to the natural stability of agroecosystems to prevent or manage pests at the very beginning before they become a potential problem. It doesn't pay attention to long-term management of habitat enhancement of the natural enemies of pests. We all would really like organic and regenerative, as we've been hearing about today. But we'll take sustainable. It works, and that's what we're looking at now, is a movement away from IPM to what's now being called SPM And our state is in the lead on this. So SPM is a consensus compromise to go beyond IPM and step forward by looking at the impacts to communities, equity, especially farm workers, linkages to water, biodiversity conservation, soil health, and climate impact, and a broader, bigger view of costs and benefits. So SPM allows us to further our work as beneficial insect producers, promoting biological solutions for pest management, and we have some good news. And Ron will tell you about what the state is thinking about and working on. And I'll give a short report on the anti-pesticide movement and how we can make it happen faster. And we'll send you off today with a vision of the state of California getting rid of all hazardous pesticides.
I talk to farmers and help them with the pest problem that they have today, and then encourage them to build habitat to reduce or eliminate the pest problem in the future. I encourage them to use all the strategies of cultural control of the pest. I consider it a success when a farmer transitions their farm to organic, eco-friendly pest control practices. Okay.
This is my dad, by the way. Our inspiration is... Use your mic. Can't hear you.
Talking to Mike. Okay, great. Get the work group.
Okay, Ron, talk about the work group.
I was invited to be on a work group to come up with a plan to get off of toxic pesticides in the state. Our governor probably feeds his kids organic food and certainly wants the same for all the kids in the state. So he set up this SPM work group. I represented several beneficial insectaries and pest control advisors that never recommend toxic pesticides. On the SPM work group with representatives of people across the pest management industry and those harmed by those toxic pesticides. The work group met for 2 years, and this past January we released a 100-page roadmap with comprehensive goals and priority actions to implement the sustainable pest management programs within the state agencies, schools, organizations, and tribes. It included 8 members for an urban subgroup that did a great analysis of the serious problems with urban pesticide use. The North Star goal is to manage pesticides for human health and safety, ecosystem resilience, agricultural sustainability, community well-being, and economic vitality. So bring all those considerations in, it looks a lot better than what we're doing today, right? The roadmap was developed by consensus among diverse representatives. Monsanto was at the table, of course. So it was a compromise in many ways, especially the timeline to get done by 2050. Hey, that's another generation away. So we're asking farm workers to put up with being poisoned for another generation. Does that make sense to you? Just this week, the Department of Pesticide Regulation released their strategic plan to act on the actions proposed in the roadmap. And we are taking comments now through October 20th.
Yeah, one more slide. The North Star.
This is North Star. La Estrella del Norte. Yes. Okay. DPR goals are to develop sustainable pest management for better practices, improved evaluation and registration of pesticides, prioritize high-risk pesticides, and promote technical assistance and innovation. Track, evaluate, and enforce safe pesticide use, especially improving pesticide sales enforcement and enhancing worker safety. Foster engagement, collaboration, and transparency to broaden access to DPR's programs, improving information and language access, and launching a pesticide notification system. And then promote excellence and innovation in the department. Other state agencies like the Department of Food and Agriculture have priority goals and actions in the roadmap. A glance at the table of contents shows that there are many pathways in the roadmap, more carrots than sticks, to remove barriers to alternatives to hazardous chemicals, and lots of background details in the appendices. Most importantly, preventing pests in the first place is keystone action by focusing on agroecology. That's an ecological approach to agriculture.
So there are market forces behind the SPM roadmap. And we see favorable social trends. More people are questioning all the toxic exposure and chronic health problems. Then as we mentioned earlier today, the 30 by 30 initiative to protect and conserve biodiversity, that requires pesticide use reduction to stop the insect apocalypse and the harm to wildlife, birds, bats, tick foxes, underground microbiome. But then there's people. How about that? The farm workers. We must have better conditions. Thankfully, we have a very favorable legislature right now with a supermajority that has passed AB 652 to establish an environmental justice advisory committee to advise the Department of Pesticide Regulation that will have members on it from communities affected by wide-scale spraying. Yay. Governor, I don't think has signed it yet, but why would he not? The more people are expressing that they want reduced exposure to pesticides, to toxic pesticides, and more companies are also developing organic low-risk pesticide products, biopesticides. Monsanto has settled, these are trends, Monsanto has settled over 100,000 Roundup lawsuits and paid out $11 billion and still has 30,000 lawsuits pending. Yeah, that's a trend, I hope. And you know what, we get calls from farmers every day in our business. And it's so gratifying. They're sick and tired of this. They don't want to spray, and they're tired of being blamed. You know, wow, he's moving the screen in front of me. Okay, he's pointing out where I'm at. Yeah, farmers are sick of the cost of the inputs, how it hurts their profit, and they're tired of being blamed. Regarding the climate crisis, they're starting to learn that they could be part of a solution instead of the problem, a part of the problem. What was that? Dr. Stokes showed 10% of the problem in agriculture. So, not a surprise that DPR is taking the roadmap seriously. It includes, and we should know because Ron's on the work group, right? So it includes goals for consumer education about urban pesticide use. And you can sign up if you want for their new newsletter with non-toxic tips. There's a marketing campaign proposed in the many pathways of the roadmap for urban pesticide users to figure out other ways than toxic ways. But we need consumers to hear broad messaging about the whole range of health and environmental problems from chemicals in food and farming. Governor Governor Newsom recently, and by the way, we want to thank Governor Newsom. We're sure that he feeds his kids organic, right? We're sure that he wants everybody's kids to eat organic. Wasn't that a great talk he gave in New York City? Wow. Enough is enough with the lies from industry and the utilities. He mentioned the utilities, didn't he? Yeah, it was great. He should suggest we kick out the pesticide industry liars as well, huh? Yeah, consumers and many farmers are seeing benefits in the roadmap to help poise them on the threshold to be part of a faster implementation. And we see an emerging movement, and it's emerging. We need to grow it. So we must demand, in particular, some better, what I call a remake of the universities. Yeah, it's a barrier. UC IPM program, it needs to be completely remade into the SPM program. The University of California, the Cooperative Extension, and to a lesser degree, Cal Poly. The universities need to stop prioritizing chemical pesticide recommendations. Just stop pretending that IPM is good for Mother Nature if chemicals aren't even needed. Poison is still poison, even if it's just used a little bit less often. So we must demand that these institutions of higher learning prioritize agroecology, or biological control, and all of the practices that go with it. Every crop in California is grown by someone organically. That tells them a lot. Just let them lead in setting those thresholds for action. And we now know so much more science about how to grow plants that resist pests and disease. So we want them teaching deep pest prevention. And there's no excuse for not. Farmers deserve these trusted experts to help transition to SPM and organic methods. Our world, and this conference is such a confirmation of how fast our world seems to be changing. I don't know, maybe I'm in a dream and need to pinch myself, but I think that there's stuff going on. And now is the time to push for everything good, but push also no hazardous pesticides. Now, we're not anti-pesticide. In fact, soapy water is a dandy pesticide. And we have a millennium of use history with soap and water. Don't we, Ron?
Right. At our information tables at events, farmers markets, and meetings, we have a post-it that has links to the roadmap and resources that we have developed. I give talks on biological control, and now I frame the information in the context of the state's policy to reduce pesticide use. We include the roadmap in our newsletters, blogs, and social media. In addition to pesticides, we need to also include synthetic fertilizers in our campaign, because the use of them makes plants more attractive to pests, stimulating the use of chemical pesticides. Plus, they generate greenhouse gas emissions. We have proposed a state campaign with Beyond Pesticides to leading organizations and diverse cultural segments who can build the political will to speed up the transition proposed in the roadmap to a healthier and regenerative California. Robert Vanden Bosch, a colleague of Jan's dad, Everett Dietrick, released his book, The Pesticide Conspiracy, in 1978. He documented how the university and extension were functioning as marketing arms of the pesticide and fertilizer industry. This created an echo chamber with all the experts hearing supportive statements from each other that we need these chemical tools to fight nature to produce food to feed the world. I think we need to focus on feeding ourselves and our communities. Part of the SPM work is to identify the priority pesticides on which to focus. But what is toxic? IBT Labs was caught faking the data on toxicity studies of IBT Labs, Industrial Biotest Labs up near Chicago, was caught faking the data on toxicity studies on pesticides such as Roundup. So how do we know what is the real toxicity of these pesticides? We keep hearing we must be science-based, but not the science that is done at the preference or to support next quarter's stock price. Data from these fake studies is still being used in reviews of pesticides. So the damage of this collusion is propagating through the so-called regulatory system. We are glad that the university and DPR are now working on reducing pesticide use, since they are the problem. But they are working with compromised data in a captured system, a captured agency. We are supporting their efforts, understanding their history and challenges.
Okay. In our work now spanning 3 generations, we know the pervasive power of the chemical pesticide industry in society, in the government, in the media, in the schools, and universities, influencing consumers and producers to accept, to just like live with, or to be blind to the corporate agenda. As a child, I saw my father lead the cotton farmers in the Coachella and Imperial Valleys, now a potential hotbed of lithium, to stop weekly calendar spraying with DDT. He was sprayed on. He was shunned in public places. We would go to the local bar for lunch and everybody knew him and we would have to sit by ourselves. He feared he would be casting concrete and thrown in the Salton Sea. It's funny, but he actually did. Ron and I and our co-workers feel so fortunate that Deke was able to set up our beneficial insect production and marketing business so that we can make a living telling the truth. We don't have to give in to industry lies. Like everybody else in this work, one way or another, in that collusive atmosphere that Ron described. We desire we see this desire for a better way from younger generations. They're standing up to social labor and environmental injustice. They're beginning to rise. And the United Auto Workers are inspiring us. Organizing pop-up strikes, greed and oppression cannot prevail. And we have a strategic plan, and if we have a strategic plan like the auto workers do, and enough people show up for it, I think we need people. We need organizers, we need a strategy, and we need people to win. So as chair, I didn't look for this, but I am chair of the Agriculture Committee of the California Sierra Club. And I'm excited that the committee settled on one mission for the next 2 years: to fight hazardous pesticides and protect farm workers. Yeah, thanks to Sierra Club. And amazing volunteer members. We developed a strategic plan, our committee, and have begun meetings with the major partners, and we have funders. Ours ready to get organized. Our strategic plan has key components for organizing, to find supporters, especially in farming regions, outreach to attract decision makers, and advocacy to talk to our legislators about new laws and executive orders to make this SPM roadmap happen like in 10 years instead of 23 years or sooner. Our strategic plan builds on recent successes in the legislature with all these kind of world-changing climate bills that just got voted on, and which we hope the governor will sign them all. And some new bills that we're already talking about today with friends here for energy and also for better food and farming policies. By setting the singular goal to promote a California Beyond Pesticides campaign, we're encouraging the California State Sierra Club to focus on toxic pesticides like it really hasn't before. So this is adding to the wonderful agenda of the Sierra Club. So we are committed to work with our allies in this field who are amazing. The Californians for Pesticide Reform has 180 members in this coalition and is especially organized in representing farm workers. And Beyond Pesticides is a part of that coalition and has its own successes in city and regional campaigns in California. Beyond Pesticides would love to see this come together with our campaign. Our first milestone happened last week with our 400,000 member Sierra Club of California advising the state agencies in a letter to what's called the AB 1757 committee, the Expert Advisory Committee to the CNRA to help speed up the year when the state achieves carbon neutrality. Okay, one of the things that the Californians for Pesticide Reform and even more ambitiously the Sierra Club calls for an increase in organic farming acreage by 40% by 2035 and 80% by 2035 and 80% by 2045 and a concomitant corresponding reduction in synthetic nitrogen use on the same timeline, and also the reduction of overall use and toxicity of chemical pesticides by 50% by 2030. Cut it in half by 2030. Yeah. Another milestone for us is this month, we have 25 members ready to start an agriculture committee of our Santa Barbara Ventura's Sierra Club chapter, which I'm very excited about, seeing how that goes and what their priorities will be. And we're welcoming new members too, every week to our state agriculture committee. So if you're interested in that, talk to me after as we're packing up today. Yeah, Ron's gonna close.
We have an urgent need to transition away from toxic pesticides for a healthier and sustainable future. There are some early signs of ecosystem collapse, such as the insect apocalypse with the dramatic decline in the number and diversity of insects. By my involvement with Californians for Pesticide Reform, I was able to participate in negotiating the roadmap, and now with Jan's leadership in the Sierra Club California Agriculture Committee, we hope to accelerate the timeline by many years. For 70 years, our company, Rincon-Vitova Insectaries, has held a vision of farms working in harmony with nature. Fighting toxic pesticides has been a barrier to fulfilling that vision. We now see public awareness building to support this campaign to eliminate all toxic pesticides. Our vision is now coming into view. Please join the movement with any of the 180 organizations that form the Californians for Pesticide Reform Coalition, including Beyond Pesticides and Sierra Club, California, and get ready for action for a pesticide-free California. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you to both of you.